Thank you for watching another episode of the Boat Geeks. If you are liking what you're finding here at our channel, please hit the thumbs up below.
And please like and subscribe so you don't miss a future episode.
Absolutely. And you can comment too. Feel free to comment.
Yeah, we love to hear what you think.
Thank you.
Rigidity and great looks coming out of it.
Patented. So you guys have some patents in the boat lift world.
We do, yeah.
That's really cool.
There's actually a lot of patents in the boat lift world, believe it or not. Yeah. So, it's fun. The industry is always innovating. Basta, we try to stay on the forefront of that, the variety of different things that we're doing over the years. This year we launched a sailboat lift. That's patent pending. And that is really unique in the way that it distributes about 80% of the weight to the keel and only 20% of the weight to the hull.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because if you're using the hull to carry the weight, then you're warping the hull a bit.
Exactly, yeah. Most people think, well, keel hangs from the boat when it's water, so it shouldn't be okay. But the designers all say, no, when it's dry, you actually want to sit it on the keel in the yard. So you see they have keel blocks, and then they have the screw jacks on the side to support it. But really, the weight should be on the keel. Yeah, and so other people have lifted sailboats before with our style lifts, but they all just hang them from the bunks. And we said, no, wait a minute, that's not how you should do it. You should lift it from the keel.
From the Big Seattle Boat Show and recorded on location in the heart of the action, it's the Boat Geeks with Darren and Darren.
We're the Boat Geeks, whatever floats your boat. We're the Boat Geeks.
Welcome to another episode of the Boat Geeks. I'm your other host, Darren. Darren Katz can't be here today. And speaking of here, as you can see, we're at the 2025 Seattle Boat Show. Last Friday, the opening day of the show was Uncorked Wine event, which is really cool because you can get a glass of wine and walk around the show. And the Uncorked Wine event is sponsored by Basta Boatlifts. And we just so happen to have the president of Basta Boatlifts, Bryce Hansen, on the show today. Thanks for being on the Boat Geeks.
Thanks for having me.
Darren and I like to say that our favorite part of doing this podcast is learning. And we like to put stuff out so other people learn. Now, when it comes to boat lifts, we all have seen boat lifts. We've seen them in marinas. We've seen them on lakes, at private docks, and so forth. But we're really kind of clueless. So would you be able to give me a brief history, a little overview of boat lifts as they pertain to the recreational boating world?
Sure, absolutely. So, people have been trying to lift boats from the beginning of time, right? Typically for commercial purposes. But boat lifts for recreational purposes have really, I would say, took hold in like the 70s.
Oh, fairly recent then.
Yeah. I mean, there was stuff before that, but it wasn't really until the 70s and early 80s that things really took off. Some of the original pioneers, Don Hurley, Sam Basta, founder of Basta Boatlifts, Bill Golden, some of those folks really started looking at how can we lift boats at your home in a way that is economical for the average homeowner to do and do it quickly and reliably and things like that. And so that was the 70s, the 80s, the early days of Shoremaster and Basta, Golden, some of those original companies that have been out for a long time.
Wow. So one of the original companies is Basta,
Correct.
A local business here
Correct.
in Puget Sound.
Yeah.
And the founder was kind of a pioneer then in that field, it sounds like.
Yeah, he was doing a bit of dock work, dock repairs, things like that. And he was also selling a boat lift product, the original Shoremaster product. And he was also an inventor. He was really a creative genius. And he thought, his thing was build a better mousetrap. How can I do this differently and better? He started tinkering and making things. In the late 80s, early 90s, he built a jet ski lift, solar powered, really things that were creative. There was working with Nyman water lifts at the time. They were powered, they're hydraulic lifts, but they were actually powered by water.
Oh.
So it was a garden hose that hooked up to this hydraulic cylinder, and actually over time it slowly pushed the cylinder out and lifted it. But it was pretty slow. We still have people with those lifts out there.
Oh, wow.
They were really well built.
Now, I went through your website It's a very, I encourage you to go to the Basta Boatlifts website, bastaboatlifts.com.
Correct. Yep.
Because you can learn a lot about boat lifts. You can learn a lot about Basta Boatlifts. And I recall seeing that you guys are innovators and you're kind of setting standards that the rest of the industry then picks up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So in the early 90s, I think the big breakthrough was the over-center boat lift, and that was patented and designed by Sam Basta. And it basically created this concept where, the boat lift goes up and is sort of a parallelogram and gets to vertical, and historically those were locked in place with a locking pin. And Sam said, wait a minute, let's just tip it a little bit farther forward. And then gravity's going to hold it in place. And so that was kind of the real big sort of eye-opener. It's like, whoa, this actually is great. We're going to use gravity to hold it in place, and now it's locked. So if there was any issue with cylinders or anything like that, gravity's holding it in place. And so that kind of spurred a bit of an arms race in the boat lift industry when it came to creativity and innovation. We tie our H frames, the two vertical parts that hold the boat lift together. We tie them together with the cylinder, and that allows it to go over incredibly smoothly. So we patented that design. We've got a variety of different things, extrusion shapes. So we use extruded aluminum for our aluminum lifts, and we have them in a particular shape that allows extra rigidity, great looks, and also formation with the lift. So it allows it, the strength and the rigidity and great looks coming out of it.
Patented. So you guys have some patents in the boat lift world.
We do, yeah.
That's really
There's
cool.
actually a lot of patents in the boat lift world, believe it or not. Yeah. So, it's fun. The industry is always innovating. Basta, we try to stay on the forefront of that, of the variety of different things that we're doing over the years. This year we launched a sailboat lift. That's patent pending.
Saw that.
And that is really unique in the way that it distributes about 80% of the weight to the keel and only 20% of the weight to the hull.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because if you're using the hull to carry the weight, then you're warping the hull a bit.
Exactly, yeah. Most people think, well, keel hangs from the boat when it's water, so it shouldn't be okay. But the designers all say, no, when it's dry, you actually want to sit it on the keel in the yard. So you see they have keel blocks, and then they have the screw jacks on the side to support it. But really, the weight should be on the keel. Yeah, and so other people have lifted sailboats before with our style lifts, but they all just hang them from the bunks. And we said, no, wait a minute, that's not how you should do it. You should lift it from the keel.
Oh.
So we've been working with J-Boats on the initial design for that. They were very particular on what they wanted for our original customer, and it's been very popular ever since.
Now, when I, years ago, would imagine boat lifts, you said the jet ski was one of the first, and that's what I picture. I picture like on a private dock in a lake or in a marina, smaller boats, but on your website, I saw some pretty big boats in boat lifts. I mean, can you talk about the range of types of vessels that you guys can lift up out of the water?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can lift anywhere from, jet skis, about 2,000 pounds or something like that. And we can go all the way up to 50,000 pounds.
Really?
Yeah. So our style of bottom resting hydraulic over center lift is kind of a specific portion within the boat lift world. There's a lot of different styles of boat lifts out there.
Yeah.
What happens in Florida is quite a bit different. They have a different style boat lift down there, but in the Pacific Northwest and the Midwest is a little bit different. So everything moves around a bit. But yeah, 50,000 pounds is big. And so from jet skis to pleasure boats to big yachts. And then sailboats and catamarans and
wow, the width of
pontoons,
because you can accommodate. Just now, one thing we haven't really talked about, and it's kind of a no-brainer, but why people want to? I mean, I want to lift our boat out of the water so we don't have to worry about growth on the bottom and so forth. I mean, talk a little bit about the benefits of having a boat lift keep your boat out of the water.
Sure, yeah. So each area is going to be different as to what they are trying to accomplish. But most people are trying to accomplish two things. One is keep the growth off, and two, keep the boat from banging into the dock. So
I didn't think of that. Duh.
Regular wind and waves are hard on a boat when it's tied to the dock all summer. Some people use the whips. Have you ever seen those whips?
Oh, yeah,
to hold
yeah.
off? They do okay, but not well in rough environments. And so keeping the boat protected and away from the dock is really important. And then, for those folks who are on saltwater and need bottom paint, having there you go. So, having it on a lift allows you to not need to paint the bottom anymore. And so now you're no longer, putting those chemicals into the saltwater, which, for almost all the boats that are out there, it is a kind of a requirement. You do need to do it. But if you have a boat lift, you don't. And that allows you a couple things. One, you no longer have growth on the bottom of your boat. You don't have the cost and the time that's related to hauling and going to the yard and that ongoing maintenance.
Yep.
And then you also have reduced or improved fuel consumption because you're not dragging around all that
You
stuff.
have a
on the
clean bottom. A clean bottom all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm calculating. Our boat is 50,000 dry.
Okay.
But we're probably 65,000. Anyway, maybe when you get one that can do that, we can talk.
Sure,
But,
absolutely. Happy to help.
We've lived on our boat for years and years, and during the heavy weather, because when you mentioned it, it was like, duh, that makes so much sense. We're on an end tie, and fenders will pop out when we're on the end tie on the outside, so we get some waves that come in. That would be really nice to be up and out and not be moving.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it's really a luxury for sure.
Basta Boatlifts, you're in SeaTac?
Correct. Yep.
Right here in the Puget Sound. And I understand that you've got Basta Boatlifts all around the world.
That's correct. Yeah. So we're manufactured locally here. Obviously, this is our home show. We're a big supporter of the show and the Pacific Northwest. I was born and raised here, so it's my stomping grounds. But yeah, we have a reach across the world. We'll ship lifts all over the world wherever we need them. Got a distributor in the Netherlands. So and it's not a global concept. In some places of the world, they don't have boats on the water. They don't live on the waterfront.
Oh, okay.
But other places, so there, Australia, New Zealand, there are boat lifts. In Europe, there's quite a bit. It's less popular in Africa and Asia, but it's becoming more popular.
Now, I was down. You got a really beautiful, huge display down there with quite a few lifts and some boats up on lifts, and it appears that you can accommodate virtually any type of vessel, especially with now the ability to lift a sailboat.
Correct.
And some of these lifts look pretty substantial in terms of weight and just the overall dimensions. How do you ship something like that?
That's a great question. So typically it's just palletized. They're in different sections.
Okay.
And so we'll palletize, up to about 12,000 pounds. Boat lift can be put on a custom pallet with all the parts and pieces in that, and it's wrapped and ready to go. It goes off to our dealer. As you mentioned, we've got folks all around the world who are a Basta Boatlifts dealer. It's not like a boat dealer. We have some boat dealers, but most of them are a dock builder or a boat lift specific person. And we just ship it off to them. They take it to the site, and then they assemble it on site, or they assemble it in a yard or on a boat launch, and then float it in, put it on their barge. There's a lot of different ways that you get them in. But once you get above 12,000, it tends to be a custom, a private truck, where you have to ship all the parts and pieces on a full semi-load.
Yeah. So this is not a DIY project. You want this put together properly,
yes,
by the right people.
Yeah, I mean, we design our product to go together very easily, and it just makes sense. Especially on the aluminum side. The steel side is quite heavy, but it's built for anything.
Right.
The aluminum side is a little bit easier to carry parts and pieces where you need to go. It's a little bit maybe easier to assemble. And so, some people can do it. Typically, we encourage them to find a dealer to do that. So.
Okay. And I was going to ask about that because you've got a couple of different materials that you can work with to build. What goes into the decision to use the steel or the aluminum?
That's a great question. Yeah, so Basta is actually one of the only sort of larger players that does steel boat lifts, at least in the over-center style. And we use those for deep installs where it's 15 feet or deeper. We recommend steel.
Wow.
In muddy situations where it's a really muddy bottom and it's soft and you want to make sure you have the rigidity of the steel. And then also when folks are in a really rough open area.
Oh, yeah.
So, and we only do aluminum lifts up to 12,000 pounds. Beyond that, it's all steel. So yeah, it's just the rigidity of steel you just can't beat. It's not as it's not as pretty as the aluminum. The aluminum, the custom extrusions we have are just beautiful. But once you get up that poundage, the rigidity is pretty hard to beat. It's why they make bridges out of steel.
Yeah, that's a good point. And as I look out at those giant cranes that are lifting containers, I mean, that's all made out of steel, so that makes sense. I was going to ask about not necessarily the places, but the types of applications. I mean, you can have these attached to a dock. You can have it in a slip in a marina, which is a dock. But I mean, talk a little bit about the variety of places that a Basta boat lift can be and do the job.
Yeah, so most of them are at a person's private waterfront home. They have a dock and they have a lift sitting next to it. So that's going to be in a lake, but sometimes in rivers, sometimes in reservoirs, kind of depends. For the over center lifts, as most of our lifts are, they have a threshold of about 3 feet of water level fluctuation. So you need to keep it within that range. So that's the majority of our line. Our smaller cable lift, jet ski lift can be mounted to a dock and have a much longer travel. So you can put that in the Puget Sound or anywhere where there's a very large water level fluctuation. For example, the South has, most people boat on reservoirs. And so those can fluctuate, 10 to 20 feet a year.
Yeah.
So that style boat lift would not work. Say in Florida, they have different style lifts that allow for different accommodation of water level. And then Basta also makes a floating lift. So that would be something that you put out into the Puget Sound that no longer requires to be sitting on the bottom.
Floating lift.
Correct.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we have one here out at the West Hall, outside of the West Hall.
Oh, I walked by that.
You did.
It has what looks like two kind of walls.
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah, so those are our floats. They're up 22 feet long and 6 feet high. They're foam filled, about 1/2 inch thick of rotomolded plastic, and then foam filled. So those floats are the flotation, and in the middle there's a galvanized steel painted, epoxy painted, so incredibly robust steel structure with a vertical travel. So previously we were talking about the horizontal or the cantilever style. This is a vertical lift, but is also hydraulic, and it is locking over center, and that will lift the boat up. And as that lifts the boat up, the floats come down as the weight comes onto the floats. So
that's fascinating.
There's a variety of floating lift styles out there. A lot of them have to do with water or air transfer. We chose to stick with hydraulics. That's our pedigree, right? But we also feel it's fast and it's also reliable because you're not counting on pumping water and sensors and things where you could, if there was a problem, could sink, right? If the water was not going in properly at a crack and all your flotation is based on air, you might have one side that's going up, and you see those on YouTube, and so you don't want that. So ours is purely based around solid flotation. So it's virtually indestructible.
So it sounds like you could kind of put it anywhere. How do you secure that floating lift? Do you secure it to the seafloor?
Most often it's side tied to a dock.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're asking earlier about marinas and things.
Yeah.
Occasionally people do have them in marinas, especially other places in the United States. But in the Northwest, they're mostly private homes. The floating lift can be in a marina though, or a private home, a side tied to a dock. The beauty of our floating lift is that it can be tied to a buoy as well.
Oh,
so it is self-contained. It's a battery recharged by a solar panel.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, you just tie it up to the buoy, and that gives you a flexibility. Whether if it's in a really rough area and you want to leave it out there all winter long, you're fine.
It's just float.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about it hitting the dock. Or if you don't have a dock, for example, some folks have maybe a high bank
Yeah.
and they want to keep it out in front and they have a way to get there, but it's not accessible by them. They can have it
They
on
can
a
just
buoy.
kayak out to their boat and
Yeah.
then tie their kayak
Matter
up
of fact,
to the
I
lift.
was talking to a gentleman on Vashon Island. That's what he wants to do. He wants to have a paddleboard and go out to his boat.
Wow.
So
That's really cool. So patents, innovation, you guys are always trying to push the envelope.
Mm-hmm.
What are you working on now that we might see without letting trade secrets out
yeah, of
into
course,
the world?
yeah. No, we've got a few things that we're working on. We've got some ideas around a cover, and I don't want to give too much away, but there are currently fixed canopies that go over boat lifts, and there are some automated covers that go over, and we think we have a better way of doing that.
I bet you do.
So, people don't like putting covers on their boat.
No,
They don't like
no.
physically going around and
Right.
putting it on. And so we have an idea, well, more than an idea, we have a patent. We are working on the development of that product. But yeah, it's a way to keep the boat clean and dry without actually physically having to put the cover on every time.
Wow. I mean, just the classic wood boat owner wanting to keep his bottom clean all the time and keep, the fresh water from causing problems on the top end. Okay, that'll work.
Yeah, so there's a variety
Wow.
of different things. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we're also a distributor of a product called C-Pen, and it's not a boat lift. It's a dry dock.
Oh,
So we have
Okay.
that actually out at Bell Harbor right now, and that's another solution for keeping your boat clean, keeping the growth off for marinas.
and the whole boat lift, when I was asking about the history, is like, I mean, dry docks have been around for how long?
They've been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's been a concept that people, from the early days where they'd have a ship near the shore and they'd shore it up and the tide would go out and
Yeah.
everybody would sit there and scrub the bottom and clean it before. So dry docks for personal use have been around for about 20 years in Australia by this company called C-Pen. And about 5 years ago, a gentleman in South Carolina started importing them, and we connected with them, and now we're offering them here on the West Coast.
Wow. So you guys have the gamut covered
We
for
do.
keeping your boat out of the water,
Yeah.
and that's pretty great.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'm glad you guys are here. We like to promote local,
Yeah. Yeah.
but think global.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, we're manufacturing here.
Yeah.
We have all the manufacturing here in SeaTac, do it in-house. So we design them, manufacture them, and then sell to our dealers here. And so
So-
it gives us flexibility around custom things. So for example, we're working on a platform lift at the moment for a customer who wants to be able to launch their electric foil, the e-foil.
Oh,
So they
yeah.
basically have a bunch of foils on there, and they pick the one they want, and they just lower it down, and away they go. Yeah, it's amazing what people will come up with and say, hey, I want to do this. Can you guys do that? And, right situation, we can make it work.
Sounds like you guys like challenges.
Oh, yeah.
And so we can say Basta Boatlifts, made in the USA.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Anything else you want to add that we haven't covered? I feel like I finally learned about boat lifts.
Well, I was just going to say a little bit, just, in the concept of boat lifts, not having the bottom paint is important, right? To not be able to do that when you have it. And so, Basta's trying in a lot of different ways to be sustainable.
Sure. That makes total sense.
At the show this year, we decided, compostable cups and, offering folks an option for not having bottom paint. And with our aluminum, we reuse sections and we design things around cut-off sections so that we can do that. We've been, trying to reduce our footprint on our plastics and our cardboard and things like that.
Yeah.
So, in addition to supporting the customer in that way, we're also trying to give back. And this year we're doing it's our 40th year.
Congratulations.
So we're celebrating that. We are offering we're doing a raffle for the stewardship partners to raise money for their waterways sustainability projects around the Northwest. And we're giving away a 40-year-old bottle of Stag's Leap's Wine Cellars. Yeah, a 93-point bottle of wine.
Wow.
So those folks who appreciate good wine are welcome to come and do a raffle and and get a chance to win it.
So yeah, you guys are boating community here in the Pacific Northwest.
Correct.
You're taking care of your people, your product, your customers, the environment, and been doing it for 40 years. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming by.
Thanks, Darren. Appreciate it.
And giving me a lesson in boat lifts.
My pleasure.
And check it out, bastaboatlifts.com. Great website, lots of information. And that's been another episode of the Boat Geeks. Remember, whatever floats your boat.
We're the Boat Geeks, whatever floats your boat. We're the Boat Geeks, it's the boat that floats that we love the most. Yes, we love the boats. We're the Boat Geeks, whatever floats your boat. Walk on the water, float on the sea, crossing the oceans between you and me. The wind in our hair, the salt on the breeze, bringing us closer, life on the sea.